All right. Okay, so we're moving on to Hayfield.
The Hayfield Hawks.
We're at the end of the road here. The end of the road. We worked our way from last year's bottom to last year's top, and a lot to be said here. A lot to be said. We'll let you kind of kick things off here.
So, anything happened at Hayfield interesting this year? I wasn't aware. I've been in a coma for less. No, I have not.
Hang on. I can answer that question for you. We can call the Fairfax Times. They can tell us.
So Hayfield has a brand new coach, and Coach Overton, Daryl Overton. So I think I'll kind of take us to the timeline of all this. We're only going to talk about this once. We only want to talk about football, but I think some of the stuff needs to be addressed because I'm sure people listen to this and they're curious. Not that anyone really cares what you and I have to say, but I think people care about what anyone has to say, period, about Hayfield. So let's kind of talk. So, around January, I want to say, we hear that Coach Aziz has been fired, which made things really interesting because normally you don't fire a two-for-2 district championship coach. So we hear he is fired. And then the rumors already start, right? The rumors already start that Coach Overton is coming to Hayfield. It is a done deal. I heard that from people that I know, people that don't necessarily operate in telling lies. But my argument was I had heard the year before that he was going to John Paul the Great. It was a done deal. He was signed, sealed, delivered. He was going John Paul the Great. And I was, again, not being from the area, I'm like, why would you leave a school that you are currently in process of getting a three-peat? So a bunch of time goes by. They're not hiring a head coach, which is really interesting. Right? They're not. They have interviews, and then nothing happens. Right? There is no head coach that is announced, and eventually it does come to pass that Coach Overton is coming to Hayfield, and then the rumors instantly start. Start, just crazy amount of stuff coming out. I think maybe we'll just play ping pong here. I'll say a rumor I heard, and Coach Dash will say a rumor he heard coming out. So the first thing I heard is that the day he was hired, there were 35 kids in line at student services. Registering from the school. I heard they essentially said the whole Hayfield team had en masse taken a city bus to Hayfield High School, gotten off from Woodbridge, and enrolled. That was the first rumor that I heard. What's the rumor you heard from over there?
I'm trying to remember. There was just so much stuff coming out at that point. We started hearing rumors about they're getting this guy and that guy and this guy and that guy from Gonzaga, DeMatha, Bosco, IMG. At one point, someone said that it was like, remember Fantastic Voyage? Is that Coolio? Yeah. They were driving up and guys were just jumping in their car and they were coming. I mean, come on, man. The stories were ridiculous.
So then, all right. So let's keep on going back and forth. Let's see how many rumors we can talk about what we heard. And again, these are all rumors. These are all things that were told to us. That I was told that he was buying apartment houses. He was buying apartment complexes and bringing in kids from up and down the Eastern Seaboard. He was bringing in talent. He essentially was going to have dorms. These kids were going to live by their own. That was another rumor I heard.
People spend so much time. There was one that he was hanging out with Elvis. That Coach Overton was hanging with Elvis in the Bahamas. I heard that one. I mean, the rumors and the innuendo, and it's wild. It's really wild, and it's unfortunate because then people start talking about other things other than football, right, and then you go from those rumors, right, and there was meetings going on and associations were meeting and all that kind of stuff. And then you all of a sudden the Fairfax Times comes out with an article, and that was, I think, the first major kind of bombshell outside of parents and coaches talking, about it.
Well, so I think the community was talking about it. I was at an event. My sister-in-law is an officer in the U.S. Navy, and they have a promotion ceremony that they go through, and they have this big, it's big formal thing. And so the realtor who had sold us our house lives in the West Springfield district, and her son had been playing football at the time that we bought our house. And so I said, "Hey, how you doing? Nice at ease. Oh, your son playing football? No, he's playing lacrosse." And I was like, "Okay." And so this person, who I know has nothing to do with any coaching, anything. She's a realtor in Fairfax. Was like, "What's going on at Hayfield?" I mean, just the amount of people who all of a sudden were very interested with what was going on over there was and don't get me wrong, people were interested because I'm sure had heard certain things. They had, you know, people's interests were that because of him coming to Fairfax and all these things coming. At the very least, you knew the best player in the state was coming with him. I mean, obviously they share the same last name. The best player in the state was coming with him. So I mean that's just that alone, right? That alone is going to spark interest. But let alone the guy who, not just the best, the guy coming the best player in the state, but the current reigning back-to-back state championship coach.
Right. Now, what do we know for sure? Well, aside from nothing, right? We do know that as of right now, as of you and I filming this tonight, and any write-ups that we've gotten from Coach Overton, there has been no official, as far as we know, decisions or anything like that. Being that nothing looks like, as of right this second, that all is good and all is going to be good come August.
Right, and I think I kind of cut you off in the thing with the Fairfax Times pieces. That made things really interesting as well. As far as like you found out who was involved writing them.
Yeah, I mean, I think once people did, it was big bombshells. Once you started talking about people's finances and that kind of stuff, now it's not like, to me, it seemed a little bit kind of like almost National Enquirer-ish at that point, right? And then you start digging deeper and you find out the person writing the article just, was involved in a lawsuit with this. Then I was like, all right, you know what? I'm not watching Crossfire. I'm not watching Real Time with Bill Maher. I mean, what is this? Like, what's going on here? This is supposed to be football.
Right.
So that I tuned out at that point when I saw that they had essentially political writers getting involved and writing about football.
Right.
That didn't smell right to me.
Right. So I mean,
I was lost at that point.
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate. If people want to have a conversation about what's wrong with high school football right now, I think that's a conversation to be had. Again, I'll come back to the California is the wild, wild west. Kids are moving all the time. So here in Fairfax, right? You have to pay to go to cross county lines, all these really, 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 really hard things. Until recently, you could go wherever you wanted, anytime you wanted. You would have kids who were freshmen would leave because they knew they could play varsity, the next week for their school. So they would leave and be on a varsity team, within a week. So yeah, if you want to have a conversation about what's going on, and if any of the things going on at Hayfield were true, then yes, there needs to be conversations. Right. I know in basketball, and if anybody out there wants to maybe tweet us and let me know if I'm incorrect on this, but you can't be an AAU coach and be a high school head coach. You can't have both. I believe that's my understanding. Is that you can't have an AAU team and be a varsity head coach.
It comes down to the percentages, I think, of the kids on the AAU team.
Right. So if you want to argue that that the PME organization is an AAU team and that shouldn't be allowed, then I think that's a conversation you can have. If you want to argue about the transfer rules, if you want to argue about how that works, there was a rule in California that said you could not follow your head coach. If your head coach went to another school, the only real transfer they'd ever block, that CIF, which essentially is our VHSL, they would block. You could not follow a head coach to another school. They said no. That's not because obviously we're not all dumb. We know what that is. Head coach goes into a school. He brings all his kids with him. I mean we're not dumb. That was the one rule that they would block. And if you want to have that conversation again about being upset about the way the rules are bent or broken and the way they get around it, then have that conversation. I think that's a fair conversation. But I think to have the conversation of innuendo, because I think that if anybody had the actual proof, somebody would say. So those articles in particular, it's always sources say names. No one's ever named anything.
Right.
And the problem you also come with district wise is you can't talk about minors.
Yep.
People want to be upset at the McKinney-Vento Act, which I learned about years ago because there was a school not schools in California use it, but there was one school in particular that was in our league that was using it at the time. And if you want to talk about how people were taking advantage of that. That being said, if a kid's saying he's homeless, you can't out that kid. You just can't, because the issue is that that rule's in place to protect these kids. Because the rule, and unfortunately, I say all the time, there are football coaches who take advantage of that rule. There's the accusation that Overton is taking advantage of that rule. There's been no proof of it at all, but I know for a fact. I mean, I'm not going to name names. I do know coaches who have taken advantage of that rule in California. But they've taken advantage of that rule. But you can't just change the rules because you don't like how it affects the football squad, because that rule's that rules in place. So a homeless child who's going through crisis can, while getting an education, yes, it really is so those kids can eat because they can get free and reduced lunch at that school. So at least they get breakfast and lunch every day. And I will say this to anybody out there, if anyone out there listening does take advantage of that rule I mean, don't do that. It's just it's not good karma. Don't do that.
Well, another thing, and in reading these reports on this whole situation, Fairfax Times and all that stuff, and reading the comments, things get real fiery, right, in the comments. Yeah. And, one of the things that I heard people say a lot is, well, Hayfield is doing what other schools have done in the past. Maybe other schools didn't do it quite as big and quite as, right? This is what I did read someone say, but they're just doing kind of a similar thing, what other schools have done. And if that's the case, then, you wonder, why are these teams complaining if they were doing it, previously as well? Now, were they not doing it as good? Were they not doing it as big? Were they not doing it as, I don't know. But that's an argument that's being made the other way.
Right. And I think to your point again, no one knows anything really. Everybody thinks they know. Everybody, it's the old, where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, I think that, that questions need to be asked. Absolutely. Questions need to be asked. I do think the other problem, though, is the silence coming out of everything, right? You have accusations being made. You have the county saying that they're investigating. It's kind of what infuriates a lot of people, right? They say they've said, hey, this is what's going on. And then in turn,
Well, I do wonder, one side kind of made their complaints. One side went to the newspapers. One side, called, Greta Van Susteren or whoever, and they wrote an article. One side did all that stuff, and they got what they wanted. It became a big story and all that. It got the investigation going, the so-called investigation, I guess, that's being reported in the paper. And if that investigation happens, which is what they wanted, and nothing comes of it, and the county says, hey, we looked. They have documentation that they live in this house and that house, or whatever it is. Is that other side going to say, oh, okay, we're good? Are they going to accept that?
Right. Yeah. We'll see. I mean, the whole thing is a mess. The whole thing is a mess.
Big mess. And it's a bummer because we want to talk about football.
That's it. And I think this will be the last time we talk about any of this stuff, unless something major happens.
Yes.
If not, as far as you and I are concerned, we're going to talk about Hayfield football because that's what that's what you and I want to talk about. We did not get into here to do a political commentary, but I think it would be what's what I'm looking for. I would think it would be disingenuous of us to talk about Hayfield and just kind of not talk about everything that had kind of gone on. And let me go again. You and I know nothing at all. We've heard the rumors like everybody else. Some people say they kind of know things. They kind of don't know things. They say the thing I hear the most is I've heard.
Yep.
But who did you hear that from? Like,
if
you have some hard evidence, like, stand with 10 toes down and put your name on it, like say it, and if you're and if someone's willing to take a stand with them, I'll listen to everything they have to say, and I just think again it's unfortunate that right now we had to spend a while talking about something that we politically and we could probably have a 3-part miniseries on just all the things that are kind of tied up into this. And but we don't want to do that. We want to talk about high school football, and
we want to talk about high school football and
talk about these kids, right? Because that's what we're kind of here to do. So,
all right, so that's the deal. Unless another bombshell drops, something huge, some kind of resolution maybe to all this, or Wolf Blitzer's talking about it on TV. All right, but aside from that, I don't even know if he's working anymore. But we'll go ahead.
Is Wolf Blitzer still on?
I'm not even sure. Larry King, is he still on the air?
Larry King, big Dodger fan, always at the Dodger game. Larry King,
really?
Yeah. I think he's just sitting next to Mary Hart. This is getting away from us. I think.
All right, so we're going to talk Hayfield football.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's talk Hayfield football. A couple things. So we were able to, we were in contact with Coach Overton, talking about football, not talking about, other stuff. And, obviously, he didn't know much about, the some of the kids who left. There are some kids who left Hayfield. He didn't know much about, that. He's focusing on who stayed and who's there.
Right.
And he says they've gotten stronger. They've been working in the weight room. He's excited about that. He did say the one thing I will say, bringing back some of this stuff, the noise. He says just the noise and the controversy and that kind of stuff that's going on out there outside their walls. Yeah. He said that's brought them closer together.
Well, it's one of the things, right? You kind of circle the wagons, right? Good old Chris Berman, circle the wagons, right? I mean, that's sometimes when things like that go on, you bring those guys together. And what's unfortunate, and not to keep on behooving the fact on this, is that, you know, you have a lot of kids there who now feel like everybody hates them, right? I mean, Ian Hall is a Hayfield kid.
Yeah.
I had spoken to a few other coaches about Ian Hall before this whole thing happened, and they were really high on this kid. You know, that kid, he's a Navy commit, you know, and he played at Hayfield last year.
Yep.
So, you know, those kids again are feeling that kind of heat again, feeling like, you know, the world is against them. You know, those Hayfield kids out there, and that's unfortunate. But like I said, Ian Hall, from the people I've talked to about him, who coached him, we know a few people on the old Hayfield staff are really high on this kid. They think that, and obviously the kid's gonna be playing Division I football next year, which is pretty impressive.
So what you're saying is that nobody circles the wagons like Coach Overton and your Hayfield Hawks. I like that. Mateo Kamarak, linebacker, defensive lineman. They like him a lot. 6'1", 205. These are Hayfield guys.
Yeah, Hayfield. Cardell Hunt, another guy from last year's team. You know, I mean, they've got the sizes. Hayfield had some talent coming back anyway, right?
Yes,
I mean, you know, and again, as of this right now, you and I do not know who's currently on Hayfield's roster. You know, so, but the kids he's listed, the kids, you know, I went back and watched some of their Hunter film. They're pretty talented.
Yep,
they're pretty talented. Now, obviously, the most talented kid on our team is Jeffrey Overton. You know, he's the reigning offensive player of the year. I mean, and the kid's a stud. I mean, I don't know. You know, he's obviously a Virginia Tech commit, which is pretty impressive, right? The kid decided to stay home. And I think maybe speak to some a little more. Not a lot of Virginia kids staying home late.
Right.
Most kids are leaving.
No, that's true. They did lose, not from Hayfield, but, you know, he's bringing in his offense.
Yeah.
Right. So he graduated last year from the previous school, the quarterback. So he's got to find another quarterback to kind of run his offense. Right. Now, you could be cynical and be like, you mean hand the ball off? Well, no, that quarterback last year threw for 70 touchdowns. He broke some kind of Virginia State record in touchdowns.
Yeah.
So now some of those were short throws, but not all of them were short throws. You know, so the kid was smart. The kid knew football because he wasn't a big kid. So he was savvy. He was smart. He could move a little bit. And they got to replace that. You got to replace that. So that's always a tough one to fill. You know, some receivers. They graduated a couple of receivers last year from Freedom who were really good receivers.
Right.
They got to replace some of those guys. So they graduated some really good players from Freedom that everyone keeps saying, oh, this Freedom team is what the Hayfield team now is. Well, some of those guys are gone. They graduated from Freedom.
Right.
So last I checked, he's not bringing, you know, kids who graduated from Freedom back for another year of football. He's got some, you know, holes to fill.
Right.
And it'll be interesting to see, you know, how he goes about doing it.
Right. And I know he put Riverdale Baptist, I believe it's a Maryland team, on the schedule to replace. I'm not sure who exactly replaced on the schedule from last year. Oh, it might have been Wakefield. I think Wakefield. He replaced Wakefield off the schedule. But you know, they do open against West Springfield, who, you know, who has the I believe he was was he not the Region D player, offensive player of the year?
Offensive player of the year, phenomenal. And we'll get to the Patriot next week. But phenomenal scat back.
Yeah.
Lightning fast.
Yeah.
So that could be a fun game.
Now, what I think is going to be really interesting is his game against South County. You know, South County. You know, obviously, Coach Pannoni is a legend, right, in the area. His special teams is probably without peer. You know.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, me and Coach Pannoni share a common background. He went to coach in Rio Rancho for a couple of years. I coached in Rio Rancho as well when I was there. In fact, one of the coaches he was there with, I coached freshman with at the time. You know, and they all had the one thing they talked about is his preparation on and I know it's not South County, but it's going to be interesting, right? You're going to have the savvy coach, right? The savvy veteran coach, you know, with South County, who's obviously going to be talented. You know, South County year in and year out, right? A perennial contender. You know, that's a game right there that you definitely have to circle on your calendar. You know, I mean,
we're going to that
game to go watch. If there's a game to go watch, I think, you know, like we had talked about in the first pod to go cover. I mean, that's a game, right? You're going to want to see. South County and Hayfield. I think that that's going to be one of the marquee matchups, right? That's that's going to be that's going to be that's the Sunday night game of the week, right? That's the one that you.
Well, yeah. Here's what I in my head. This is what I envision, right? I envision, and we were talking about this. We're big wrestling fans, right? Back in the day, and they were out there and playing Hilton and some of those teams, Potomac Falls and some of those teams out there. Now you're coming here. Now you're coming to Fairfax. Now you're coming to this region. You're coming to Panone's region.
Yeah.
Right. You're coming to Panone's region, and it kind of reminds me of Kevin Nash and Bischoff. Right. This is where the big boys play. Okay. Now what's going to be Overton's response to that? Is it going to be we don't play, and is he going to power bomb South County? This is what everybody wants to see. This is the heavyweight battle.
Yes, absolutely. Right? Yeah, this is definitely a matchup you want to see. I mean, because kind of wrestling thing, right? This is we're getting Ric Flair at a WCW fighting Hulk Hogan at a WWF, right? The two teams that are the two championship level guys are kind of going at it, right? So that should be interesting. And South County doesn't back down from anybody,
right?
South County will come out there, chest going, and Coach Panoni and South County are pretty much willing to go anytime, anywhere.
Yes.
So I think that again, you're going to circle that in your calendar, and you're going to say, you know what, this is definitely a game. It's going to be standing room only, right? I'm sure people are going to be standing around the track. People are going to stand in their cars. It's going to be what high school football should be, right? It's going to be action packed and everybody involved. Fans are going to be cheering.
It's going to be wild.
Yeah,
it's going to be absolutely wild. You're right. It's going to be wrestling atmosphere. It's going to be people holding, John 316, Stone Cold 316 signs up. I'm serious. And if South County really wants to get in and have fun with this, South County needs to step up and say, hey, you know what? This is our region. This is our region. Historically, I don't mean this past year. I know Braddock won it last year, but this is ours. You talk about Ric Flair. What did Ric Flair always say?
To be the man.
You got to beat the man. And if I'm South County, if I'm Panoni, that's what I'm saying. Let's go. Let's settle out on the football field. Enough of newspaper articles and all this dumb stuff. By the way, that West Springfield game in week 1, don't take that one like that. That is going to be a good game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And also, right, playing conference opponents, you never know, right? You never know who's going to jump up and bite you. There were years, again, I'm a big USC guy. My dad went to SC, so I grew up for SC a lot. And, there were a lot of the Pete Carroll years, they were really good.
Yeah.
And then they'd go to Oregon State and lose. Or they go, they go to Cal and lose to a team. You're like, what are you doing? How are you losing to this team? And any Friday night, right? And so, and their opponents moving forward, they're it's one of those games where when you coach at a powerhouse, I've coached at powerhouse before too, that you're a lot of these teams Super Bowl. You are the Super Bowl that they've been waiting for, and they're like, we can make our name by taking out Jesse James. And so I'm sure that's gonna be a case with a lot of these schools, and you never know, right? These schools have pride, these coaches have pride, and you never know.
Don't forget Edison beat them for the first time in history, apparently, last year. And they why not make it 2 in a row?
Yeah.
Right? Go to try and make it 2 in a row.
Yep. Little Ernie Banks, right? Let's play 2.
Let's play 2. And one side note with all this going on with Hayfield, young Overton does have some records he's chasing. He's chasing, I think, Virginia State all-time rushing record, Virginia State touchdown record. He's got some things. I've seen some posts on social media and stuff that he's chasing some of these records, and to achieve those records, which I think he'd like to have, they got to win some games by a pretty hefty margin.
Yeah.
So and they got to score some points to win to break those records. So should be interesting to see if he can get some of those records.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously a special athlete. I mean, it's one of those ones where Tony Rojas was one a couple years ago, right? Where you kind of wanted to watch that kid play. Unfortunately, we had to watch him up close and personal, which was not always the easiest thing going. And what's weird is you have a personal relationship with the kid. You've known Tony for a long time. When you watched him, you're like, that kid is different than everybody else in the field. It was pretty obvious when you watched him. And I think the same thing now the young Overton. You watch him and you're like, that kid is different. And I say throughout my life that there have been times, again, being from Long Beach, I remember watching Deshaun Jackson when he was at Poly, being like, oh my God, that kid is unreal. I mean, and he's the kind of athlete that just kind of changed his game. Similar to a Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson, his senior year, played wide receiver all year till they got to the I guess would be the region championship for Virginia, the CIF championship, and they put him at corner because they knew that if you press covered their outside receiver, it was an automatic fade call, and they were like, okay, have fun with that. And he goes and he just makes a difference, right? And just kind of talking about Deshaun, and then we played him, and the DBs came back to the sideline after the first drive and they said, don't call man coverage anymore. Because if you call man coverage, it's going to be a touchdown. So keep us back because we know now. And we didn't have bad athletes. We had kids who could play, but they kind of knew going forward.
Right.
Again, just time my experience. I remember playing against William McGinnis. I didn't play against William McGinnis was a senior when I was a freshman, but I remember he was just a man among boys. He was obviously different, and I think the same thing you're going to see right now with Overton, right? I mean, he's obviously the kids in Virginia, right? That you've seen. Who was the guy at Westfield?
Evan Royster.
Yeah, right. Obviously, just different kid. And Noah Kim.
Yeah.
Noah Kim is that
Noah Kim at quarterback. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. When they walked in the field, you kind of knew, and
right.
And so, luckily for us, we're not coaching this year, so we don't have to worry. We don't have to, be pulling our hair out and drinking the Maalox, watching the kid. We actually enjoy watching this kid play, which will be pretty exciting.
That's right.
And again, with me calling defense last year, and for the first time in a while, I am going to be excited to watch the outside linebacker that they have this year playing. Obviously Navy commit, and also to get in the Navy, right, means the kid must be a solid student.
Solid.
Must be a solid student, right? I mean,
right.
Navy is not.
Good student, good human being, good all around.
Navy is taking our best and our brightest going to Navy. So, it's going to be exciting for him to play on there. And, especially because obviously Hayfield's gonna get some leads, and that kid's going to get a chance to really get the quarterback.
Right.
Which will be pretty fun to watch.
Well, as we kind of wrap up the national conference, we knew it was going to be a longer episode. We knew we had to address the national situation going on with Hayfield.
Yeah.
So we kind of, got that out of the way, talk about football again. Before we close out, though, got to ask you, I'm going to ask you this for every conference. Give me a dark horse, team might surprise, people in the playoffs, that kind of thing. Go ahead. Give me a dark horse, and then give me a favorite.
So I'll go favorite first because obviously, I mean, there's no secret, right?
Right.
Regardless of what you heard about Trent, the fact is they have Jeffrey Overton, who is the best player in the state. So I mean, when you have that type of kid, you're going to be the favorite on every game you go into. I mean, it is what it is. And Hayfield is the defending district championship, so you add him to the mix with those kids. That's going to be it. Now I'm going to go with my dark horse. I'm going to go Falls Church. I like what I hear about Coach Coogan. I think you get. I think when we got done playing them, you get the right guy there, you can do something, And I think my dark horse right now is Falls Church.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, I mean, I echo what you said as far as the favorite. It's going to be Hayfield. And to your point, it might have been Hayfield regardless.
Right.
It might have.
Right.
But now if just bring in, forget about 85,000 recruits or whatever, like it's like the movie 300, right? Forget about that. It just the one guy,
right? Like
you said, when you get a player that special, it's hard to beat a team. So I'm going to go Hayfield as my favorite to win probably that conference.